Hi, welcome back to the Keys History and Discovery Center for our Thursday edition of What's in the Museum. I'm Brad Bertelli, the curator here at the Keys History and Discovery Center. Hope everybody's staying safe and occupied and no one's going crazy inside their house. So today I want to talk a little bit about one of the bigger exhibits we have called Stories of the Upper Keys. And I want to encourage anybody who's watching to, if you have any questions about anything, any piece of history you're curious about or anything I'm talking about or anything you see, feel free to type in and ask a question. And my partner in crime there, Jill Miranda Baker on video, will be happy to relay that message for you. So this is the biggest exhibit that we have done, and it was a real challenge. When I was working with our designer, he said, okay, you have 8 panels, tell a story. And during this time, we had a vision for the museum, but the museum has limited space, and I kept losing space for exhibits as new things cropped up. So I had to cram more and more information into these 8 panels that you see behind me. And the challenge was how to make them connected. There's 7 or 8? Oh, Jill just counted, and there's 7 apparently. In my head there are 8, which is even more of a challenge. So now I have to compact it even more. But we're talking about how to represent a big piece of history covering a broad expanse into a pretty limited area. So with these 7 panels, I'm talking about different sections of the Upper Keys and different ways that events have changed and altered the history. So, for instance, the Oversea Railway totally changed how the Florida Keys operated. Prior to Henry Flagler coming down to the Florida Keys, the only way to move information or people or get your mail or any kind of contact with the outside world was only done by boat. And boats were super non-reliable. If there's too much wind, if there's not enough wind, you can't go anywhere. A trip to Key West to get your mail, to see friends, to pick up coffee or flour or sugar. On a great day, if the wind is right, it might take a day to get down there and a day to get back. Without any wind, it might take a week, 10 days to make it all the way down there. So with the changing of Henry Flagler coming into the Keys, now we have this centralized rail coming down, which is more reliable. So, and because we didn't have to worry about weather, didn't have to worry about tides and wind, now this train is coming down, every day, twice a day, from Miami to Key West and Key West to Miami. And as that did, the community, which had been on the edges of the island, where the docks and the boats were accessible, now began to move closer to the railway. And one of the big examples of that would be the panel behind me that says Plantation Tavernier. Tavernier is a village, a community on Key Largo. Originally, it was called. The precursor was called Planter, and Planter was a farming community around mile marker 94 on the Atlantic shore. It's kind of where Harry Harris Park is today, and Ocean Point Suites condominium complex. And this was a farming village, and it got the name Planter because they were planting pineapples and melons and cucumbers and tomatoes. And that was established in the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. But when the railroad came to town, and while the railroad didn't arrived in Key West in 1912, by 1908 there was daily service in the upper and middle Keys. And as the railroad came to town, the people of Planter began to move closer to the railroad, and the depot there was the Tavernier Depot. So kind of Planter disappeared, and Tavernier begins to develop more as a more centralized community. Some of the other panels we have up here, and it's the challenge in making the Stories of the Upper Keys was taking all these elements and trying to connect them. So, and what's cool about this exhibit, and what was challenging for me and fun for me, was how to make them, how to keep them connected. And this exhibit is cool because the longer you stare at it, the more time you spend with it, the more things you'll start to see. The more, we have some of these really cool interactive pieces that, that show different parts of this one's all about the railroad. And we have, and there's some, the pictures, the artifacts. These artifacts came from the Flagler Museum up in Palm Beach. Thank you, Jill. And this is kind of a cool, it's a dining car menu from that era. And then, yeah, some of the prices are cool. For an iced grape juice is 20 cents. A slice of pineapple, 25 cents. A fish, fried fish or broiled fish, 80 cents. And this is a picture of a dining car, which is kind of how I started with this part of the exhibit. I had this really cool picture of the dining car, so I wanted to show some, and these are some of the items that would have been, for serving a butter plate, a milk creamer, a hot cake tin. But it was fun to take all these separate elements and use threads to connect them all. One of the cool features, one of my favorite stories is Ed and Fern Butters. It's a love story. And without Ed and Fern Butters, who lived who had their first hotel, one of the early Florida Keys hotels, the Key Inn in North Key Largo, kind of on the Card Sound area of today, sold their business to a woman named Mabel Harris, and this became, what was once the Key Inn, became Mabel's Place. And Mabel Harris was from Chicago, and she took this mom and pop restaurant and hotel from Ed and Fern Butters, and again she offered, warm beds and good cooking with turtle steaks and conch chowder and key lime pie, but she also offered other things that the Butters did not, things like alcohol during the Prohibition years, gambling, and you'll see in the picture some female companionship if a lonely fisherman is looking for something like that. But what's kind of cool about Mabel's Place is that she had a hard time running the business by herself, so she wrote home and asked for someone to come help her, and one of her brothers came down to help her run the business, and his name was Harry Harris. And Harry Harris becomes this really big part of Monroe County history. He moves from working with his sister to the Tavernier area. He becomes a county commissioner. He becomes the mayor of Monroe County. He gets indicted for accepting bribes so it's got a really fun story. And those are just some of the things that this Stories of the Upper Keys talk about. And also we have these 3 really cool touchscreen monitors that are turned off right now through this crisis, but on those monitors we have even more information. And there are movies, there are, this one talks about Herbert Hoover. He looks stunning in this picture today. There's one about showing building of the railroad. There's one talking about the Labor Day Hurricane 1935, and also more details. And what's cool about these touchscreen monitors is that we can keep adding information and keep growing what we have here to offer at the Keys History and Discovery Center. And so I hope you guys have a safe weekend and stay safe. And I'm sorry? Questions. If anybody has a question, please, I'll stand here as long as you guys have questions to ask, if anybody does. If not, you can still type them up, and when I get back to my computer at the home office, I will be happy to answer any other questions you might type in. In the meantime, is anybody...
Tony, age 10, wants to know how long did it take to build the railroad?
The railroad, it's a great question. How long did it take to build the railroad? About 1905 is when the surveying started from Key Largo to Key West began. By 1908, there was daily railroad service in the Upper Keys, all the way down to Knights Key, which is the foot of the 7-mile bridge. In 1912, the railroad is completed. Not totally completed, but enough for Henry Flagler to have that first railroad car down from Miami to Key West. But by the time the actual railroad was finished was 1916, by the time all the bridges were complete. So from 1905 roughly to 1916 was that 11 years. Hope that answers your question, Tony. Anybody else? All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us again here again at the Keys History and Discovery Center. I hope you're enjoying what you're seeing. We can't wait to open back up and have all our visitors come back and enjoy the incredible things we've done here at the museum and we will continue to do. Thanks for supporting us. Thanks for tuning in. And I'll see you. We'll see you Monday with Blake feeding lionfish, I believe. And then Tuesday, Blake at 1 o'clock on Monday, and then Tuesday back with me at 10 o'clock. And we'll explore probably another favorite character of mine, Captain Ben Baker, and who was a wrecking king of the wreckers in the 1860s, 1870s, and also one of the very first pineapple farmers. So thanks for seeing us. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.